Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Sobriety University podcast. We're excited to have a special guest on today. We've taken a little break from the podcast to kind of do some things behind the scenes, but we're back today, and we got my homie Apollo Nash. Welcome to the channel, brother.
What's going on, bro? How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to get this thing rolling.
Yeah, dude. You're our first DJ to be on the channel, so this is a special moment.
Oh man.
I'm a big house music lover, and I know a lot of other folks out there are. So I'm really looking forward to talking to you about your journey with alcohol. So as we begin, why don't you just dive in and tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Greg. I produce dance music, electronic music under my Paul Nash alias. I've been producing, well, technically on and off since like 2013. That's kind of when I started everything and kind of started diving into music, into the scene in general. But then I really started to take it a little more seriously. I want to say sometime around 2017, and that's when I kind of got my first release in kind of like the trance world. And then I've kind of just been building my profile, building up my portfolio, and kind of finding my way into like bigger and better labels. And yeah, so now we're in 2023, got a couple other shows on my belt, a lot of music that came out too. And yeah, here we are.
That's awesome, man. Now, we were talking a little bit before the show. What got you into trance versus another genre?
Oh man, it's a bit of a long story, but I'll try to keep it very short and succinct. But I'll kind of tie into like how I kind of got into just dance music in general and kind of how I came across trance. This was kind of back in say 2000 and I want to say it might have been 2009 actually. Unfortunately, I kind of had a bit of a family emergency, kind of lost my home to a fire, and I had a high school friend by the name of Brian. He was someone I met in high school, and he was very much into just music in general. So every now and again, he would like send me music, send me mixtapes of like random albums, random like singles and things like that. He was the one that kind of put me on to guys like DJ Shadow and put me on to Daft Punk and all those bands and
Classic.
stuff. Yeah, absolutely. So after the fire that happened to me, he sent my brother this remix from Workshop and Robin for the Golden Robot. It's from Spencer and Hill. It's like this old like electro house track that came out back in like 2008, 2009, and I thought that was awesome. Pandora was pretty big at the time, so usually when you find a song, you just punch it into Pandora Radio, and you find like all the songs are like similar to that. So from there, I came across a bunch of other electronic acts, but the first two that I think really stood out to me was Cascade and Deadmau5. They had a song called "Move for Me," and then I found their EP "Move for Me." I remember, and then again, kind of like wanting to find more music that was like that, punched that into Pandora, and then from there, I found Ocean Lab. I found their song "Lonely Girl," and I thought, okay, this is like probably the it was incredible. Like listening to that song, especially compared to some of like the more kind of like clubbier kind of dance leaning tracks. Like that was probably like the most melodic sounding song I ever heard. Like in that whole discovery phase of like electronic music at the
Sweet.
time for me. So again, wanting to find more music like that, I just typed in Ocean Lab Radio into Pandora, came across Above and Beyond for Tri-State, fell in love with that entire album, probably listened to that album like so many times, and then kind of just dove into that wormhole. And yeah, that's kind of like how I kind of got started with trance.
Cool. That's yeah, we all have an origin story, and it's very cool that you found your niche and you found your genre early.
Yeah.
I know a lot of producers, they struggle to find that sound and what they really are passionate about. For me, it's big room. However, big room has kind of died. It's more like big room techno.
Yeah.
So it's been a journey navigating that. Now, so why we're here today is because, guys, if you didn't see by the title, Greg has been on a journey to experiment what life is like without alcohol. So you committed to a 1 year agreement with yourself of no booze. And I'm curious, like, let's go back a bit. When did you find alcohol? And when you did, what did it do for you?
That's a great question. Yeah, so my immediate family is very like no alcohol, like very dry and very much into like just staying sober. my mom especially, she was always telling me like, just don't drink, it's not good, that kind of thing. But you being like a very curious like young adult teenager, you're just always curious just to see like what it's like. Um, my first actual stint with alcohol was just like at a friend's house. We were all just going to like we were going to Rutgers Fest actually, which is like a big like yearly concert thing that was at my school, Rutgers University. And we were just pre-gaming, and then that was like the first time I ever like took a shot. I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. Um, but then, as I started going out later on in the years, I started like going out to more bars and started drinking more. And then through there, I was kind of like getting into kind of like binge drinking, right?
Okay.
Right. Um, the one thing that I've noticed when I was in those beginning phases and like, getting drunk for the first time, normally I'm a very like quiet, shy, not shy, but like very introverted person. Like I'm not like this like boisterous, super social type of person. Um, but when I was drinking, I realized that that persona kind of like went away. I was more loud, a little more extroverted. I was just a little more livelier, right? One thing I started realizing too was a lot of my friends who kind of saw both versions of me. They realized like, yeah, like Greg, like you're a lot more, we a lot more fun. You're a lot more livelier. We actually like drunk you sometimes. Like it's actually a lot more fun. Like you're the life of the party, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, well, they like that version of me, so maybe I should just kind of lean more into that. So from there, I was just like drinking a lot more.
Okay.
Sometimes my
And
friends with the
that's a
yeah,
tough message to hear from people that are close to you. Like, hey, Greg, we don't really like you when you're not drunk, but when you're drunk, man, you're our best friends. So
I mean, I don't think they said it like explicitly like that, and I don't
yeah,
think they
yeah,
meant
yeah.
anything
I
like
mean, dramatic a bit,
for sure.
but
Yeah, I don't think they were trying to be malicious when they were trying to tell me that. They were just saying
right.
like the attributes that I showed off when I was drunk was a lot more. They enjoyed it, right? They
Yes.
enjoyed that side of me. Whereas when I was like sober, I was a little more reserved, a little more quiet,
Yeah.
less willing to be, a little more extroverted.
Yep. Yeah. My friends were like, "Do we love High Joel?" It was like,
Yeah,
and although I'm like, they probably love Sober Joel too. Um, it did do something in the subconscious where I'm just like, well, they like this, so let's go. So I relate to that a lot.
yeah,
So continue.
yeah. So then over the years, I would just like sometimes I would go out to clubs, I would go out to house parties, and I would just drink and drink and drink. Um, and but then I started realizing that at some point it became a bit of a slippery slope. So if I'm out in a place and I'm feeling like anxious, right? Like somehow I also get like social anxiety when I'm out in a place I've never been to before. Um, I'll say, okay, well, let's just go to the bar. Let's just loosen up, get some drinks in us. Let's just do it, right? So I'll start, and then I would still feel that level of anxiety. It's not going away. So I'm like, okay, well, let's keep drinking. So
Mhm.
that would kind of be this like and this endless cycle of just like you drink, you still feel anxious, you keep drinking to alleviate the actual anxiety, and then you're still feeling anxious, so you just keep going and going and going until you're blacked out or you're just feeling sick, and then you end up doing something that you regret. You end up doing and saying something that you didn't mean,
Yeah.
and yeah, it became a problem. So there was a point actually sometime late last year where um, I was reserving just drinking just to like go out to like a party or it's like a club, but there was times where like after work I'm like feeling a little bit stressed out. I was like, let me just go out to the bar. Let's just have a beer. So I just feel
Mm-hmm.
unwind, right? So that was a thing for a while, and then once a month turned into like every week, and then every week turned into like every day and the weekend. And then
Mm-hmm.
it got to a point where I was like drinking literally every weekend. Before it
Okay.
was just like maybe once every couple months. Then it became like a weekly thing.
Right.
Um, and then I think sometime in January I went out to a show in New York, and that was the first time that I blacked out
Okay.
after like a long time. I was like, oh wait, I don't remember anything. So I was like, okay, I should definitely start cutting back now because it's getting to a
Okay.
point where I'm like, okay, this is becoming an issue, to a point where like I'm not happy with the way things are going.
Right. They're
Um,
like, Greg, you said what to Ferry Corsten?
imagine,
Gosh
oh
dang
man, get him out of here.
it. He wanted to sign you and you just told him to piss off.
But yeah, so when I started to try to cut back, and it wasn't really until I came across this book from Alan Carr called How to Control Your Alcohol.
Mm,
And I came across that book, I think, on Amazon. I was just like, I was looking for ways to kind of cut back, and I was reading it, and spoiler alert, like the actual main message of the book isn't to actually like control or like do
yeah.
cut back from alcohol. It's just like, no, you go complete this over.
Yep. It's a
And
good clickbait title for
it
sure.
is, it is, it is. It got me, and and
Like there's hope.
yes, right. And then one of the bigger messages I got from that book was, I forget, I don't know if it was like an exact quote from it, but this is like at least the message I got was a lot of the things that you felt alcohol promised to you, sobriety is actually the thing that's going to get that stuff to you.
Mm,
Alcohol, in a lot of ways, just suppresses parts of the brain that will help you to make rational decisions. So
okay.
what I thought was, hey, like it's actually reducing my social anxiety. It was just suppressing that part of the brain that makes me like want to process those things, and then in turn will give me anxiety. Because then when like if you go back to those same settings, and you're not drinking, you're still anxious. It didn't really make it go away. It just kind of
Right.
like alcohol just make you just kind of like just forget about it and just kind of suppress that part of your brain to kind of process those things. And then of course it
We
went through.
talk about that
Yeah,
a lot. To interrupt you here quick, Greg, about that on this channel is that a lot of people, once they get sober, all that stuff that they've been hiding comes back up.
yeah,
So it's absolutely a suppressant. And I'm glad you said that and had that realization, because a lot of people don't realize that. And then when all that stuff comes up, they're like, what the hell's going on? Like, I'm going crazy.
right.
Nope. It's always,
And this even went back to what I was saying earlier about like the endless cycle and kind of like the slippery slope, where it's like you go out, you drink to kind of alleviate the anxiety that you get, but then you're realizing like, oh wait, I still feel anxious. I'm still feeling nervous. So still feeling the thing that I'm not trying to feel right now. So you just keep drinking more to hopefully alleviate, but then you just you end up either getting really sick or just blacking out or just doing something you end up regretting. So hearing that from Alan was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
nice.
You know,
Totally. 100%. And those nights can be fun, and they can also be a slippery slope, like you said. So you had that realization. And then what made you decide, yo, Greg, I want to take a year off for myself and just to have this change of pace, etc.
yeah. So after I read that, and even though I said I wanted to cut back, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just try just cutting out for a year. Because I still enjoy like a mixed drink every now and again. I still enjoy like having like a tall IPA or whatever. But in the late summer and the fall, looking back on it, you know, I remember when I was younger, I would say I would never bring alcohol home. I would never drink like that frequently. And then sure enough, that actually happened.
Yeah.
So I realized like, you know what, I need to take like a break for a while, especially when, like I mentioned before, I was drinking that frequently for like that whole season.
Yeah.
Plus, like I had my entire 20s of like just going out and just drinking whenever I was out and stuff. So I was like, you know what, let me just take a step back a bit and see what life is like now, like as a 30 something year old. Like, let's try being sober from alcohol for a little bit and kind of see what I find and see what happens. Um, I was also at a point where I was looks also like uh, I was yeah, I was also looking for new work, and I finally got a new job, and things were kind of like improving in my life in a lot of ways. So I was like, you know what, and I kind of made the assessment that out of all the bad things that happened to me in the last like 10 years, alcohol always had some level of involvement with it. So I was like, okay, let me see if I remove this and see how life ends up turning out in like the next year. Right. And I was like, okay, let's just give it a try. I think as of today, I might be at 160 days.
Let's
So I was like,
go.
yeah, thank you.
Congrats.
And yeah, thank you. And yeah, let's see what happens in like the next 6 months and see where I'm at.
Cool. Cool. So that is definitely something we're going to be diving into here a little bit for the rest of the show, is to find out what those changes were like for you. And I guess we'll just start there. How are you feeling today? 150 days in, what's your
Uh, I feel good. I mean, I feel great. I think my biggest worry for a long time was if I'm out again, like how would I be able to still enjoy myself like in like a social setting, or if
yeah.
I'm like at a bar, like can I still go to a bar?
Yeah.
And that was like my biggest concern. And now like I'm finding out that there's so many different alternatives to still enjoy yourself at the bar, right? Like hey, like there's non-alcoholic drinks you can
Mm.
enjoy, right? Like there's non-alcoholic beer. Yeah, I actually found out that like I like beer, but like I don't have to have it with alcohol now. It's like, oh
Yeah.
wait, you mean I can enjoy beer and not get wasted now? Like that's awesome. Like I can enjoy myself and have this level of clarity. That's another thing too. Like I think there's a level of clarity that I feel like I get now that I have now that I'm out and doing stuff socially. Like I'm fully aware of everything. I'm not at this point where I'm out at like a nightclub or I'm at like a bar or like a party or whatever, and then I'm drinking, and then over the span of 3-4 hours, things get hazy, things get blurry. I'm
Mm.
not fully aware of the things that I'm doing. There's like a level of clarity that I've gotten during those instances. It's like, this is pretty neat. It's actually really cool to actually be able to have that.
It sounds like, yeah, you're just more present wherever you go now. So
Yeah.
you don't have that suppressant holding you down. And now I'm very curious. I'm sure the audience is too. So you're a DJ in a nightclub, bro.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not drinking. Like, tell me about that. Like, how does that work?
So I remember, so it's actually, there've been a few instances that kind of uh, made me kind of take a step back and realize like, oh wow, like this is different.
Mm.
So I remember like my first gig that I played, like when I decided to go sober, and just kind of like I'm at the bar, I'm just ordering like Red Bulls and like soda, whatever. And you get a chance to just observe and just kind of look around and see what's happening. And it's like I don't want to say I'm like the only person in it that's sober,
Yeah.
but it's almost a bit more obvious to see like who's drunk, who's
Oh, totally.
tipsy, right? You get that level of awareness.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you're kind of trying to interact with people who have just been drinking like a ton.
Mm.
And you're kind of trying to interact with them and observe and see what's going on. And it's like, oh, okay, so you're acting super obnoxious now. I'm gonna go away. Normally, if I was like drunk, I'd be like just entertaining it. But now I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I don't want to know.
Mm.
Um, and so, but it's still cool. Like I think I still get some level of social anxiety when I'm in those spaces, but
Sure.
it's definitely it's definitely great to still be able to have your full bearings and be fully aware of what's going on. Especially, and I've also noticed too, like, being, I won't say professional, but just someone who's like in the industry or working or whatever. Um, I remember when I used to drink and sometimes I get drunk and sometimes like I'll meet people who are like, or, in the industry too, like other industry people or even like the headliner. And there have been instances where I would get way too lit and I would say and do things that were embarrassing.
Oh no. So you
Yeah.
did talk to Ferry.
Oh no, I listen, like I was able to have a full conversation with Ferry. That was like an awesome thing. Actually, by the way, he's an awesome guy. I love talking to him. But I feel like if I was probably drinking a lot or like in a very inebriated state, that conversation would have went totally different. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But yeah, being able to have that level of clarity and being able to kind of still achieve that level of like professionalism that you
Yeah.
can kind of, because it also gives me the impression that like I'm taking this seriously now, right? Like
Right.
I'm not like getting wasted. I'm actually working. I can actually like have my full bearing, even if I'm not working, even if I'm not like playing. Like it's still like I'm here. I'm taking this seriously. I'm interacting with other people who may be drinking or maybe not be drinking, but I
Mhm.
still have my full bearings. I'm fully aware of what's going on, what I'm doing, and yeah, there's a level of confidence that you get too, where it's like I don't have to drink and get myself loosened up just to be able to kind of navigate in that space.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I like how you put that, because although like a lot of people, they see the consequences of their drinking and that's kind of a big factor for them. Once you start seeing wins, like you being able to have that conversation with Ferry, like I imagine that was a huge, and Ferry Corson, by the way, guys, who's a huge DJ, if you didn't know, you getting to have that conversation with him and connect. And I think you guys did a collab or you did like a remix for him, right?
No, I didn't do no, not
Oh,
yet.
okay. I'm tripping, but
But I'll write that on the vision board though.
yeah, nice, nice. I'm sure that was confirmation for you too, that like what I'm doing is working, because I just got to have this experience with him.
Yeah, and again, it gives you a level of confidence to know that you can navigate in a very like chaotic environment, like say like a
Yeah.
nightclub or even like a festival, and I don't necessarily need to get myself, inebriated or drunk to be able to do that. You can walk in sober and do whatever you got to do, and then leave not hungover or
Yeah.
super drunk, and not like aware of what's going on. So
Yeah. Dude, that's one of the best parts about being sober I found and going to nightclubs. So I was telling you before the stream, I was in Poland for a while and I was going to a lot of nightclubs. I love house music, and where I'm from in Wisconsin, dance music scene's very small. So it was like I was like a kid in the candy store.
nice.
And I definitely had that experience where I was like, okay, like I'm gonna go, I'm just gonna move around, dance a little bit, and I'm gonna go home and go to bed. Like there wasn't this like I need to stay up till like 6 in the morning and get absolutely turned. So it was really nice. And there were some moments where I was like, it would be nice to just like go crazy like these people are, but I'm like, actually it wouldn't, because I'm gonna wake up and I'm feeling like shit and lose my consciousness and stuff. It was funny though, you could definitely tell who was drinking or not. There's like that, there's that like wild party energy.
Yeah.
That
There's
for sure.
there's there's been a lot of moments even like recently where you still go to shows and you're kind of seeing like the guy or the person who's like blacked out, like really lit, and then you're seeing and you're hearing the things that they're saying, and you're just like, oh really, like you're gonna say that, like, and especially and especially seeing who they're speaking to, it's like, oh, okay, you're really making a really bad impression here, like this.
Ugh,
Yeah, I know, like if you were sober you wouldn't be saying that,
right, right.
so but then like you watching that and it's like, and you also think back like, wait, was that me? Did I used to do that? you know
No, not me.
yeah, no way.
No.
But then it was like, oh wait, that might have been. I
Oh,
might
yeah.
have had one instance where it was like that. So
Oh yes,
yeah.
yes. Alcohol, yeah. It's a crazy, crazy thing, man. So let's rewind a little bit. When you first decided to quit, how was that like first month or so for you?
Um. So it was interesting because most of the time when I go out, I don't really drink at home unless like I'm coming back from a place that I was at, right? Um. So the first time I went out in that month, it was a little weird because you're in the space where you're just surrounded by alcohol and you feel like that's the only thing that you can drink. Um, so when you can't order vodka, you can't order beer, you can't order tequila or whatever, you have to stick with just soda or water or something like that. And and I've gotten comments sometimes where it's like, well, you're at a bar, so what do you like? What's the point about being here if you're not going to drink, right? So there's a lot of like sometimes there's some like social pressure to
Mm,
still have to kind of follow the rules, and
okay.
if you're at the bar, you have to drink alcohol, which or if at the club, you have to drink alcohol, whatever, right? So there's a lot of that, but I was lucky to again come across some other drinks you can drink. Like again, I discovered that I actually like beer, right? But I
Mhm.
don't have to. But then there's options where there's no alcohol in it, like there's not
Yeah.
alcohol, like Heineken Zeros, right? I can drink that. So being able to find those options has been really helpful. So now it's like I don't feel weird. I mean, I still get like made fun of sometimes for drinking that stuff, but it's
Lose.
like, hey, listen, like I can drink this and not wake up tomorrow hungover. I can wake up at like 8 o'clock in the morning and feel great. I'm not hungover at like and then having to recover all day. That's another thing too. So when you're out and then you come back home and you're sleeping, you don't have to wake up at like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning hungover, or you have to spend the entire day recovering from that hangover and you
Mhm.
wasted the entire day. So
Yeah.
being able to kind of see that kind of progress where it's like I can get up and feel great and not feel hungover at any sense is like, oh, this is pretty neat. And just getting used to that and being able to, oh, another thing too is, realizing that you're not spending as much money
Mm,
anymore, right?
dude.
Like, so now instead of, you know, cashing, well, closing out your tab and realizing like, oh shoot, like I definitely spent way more than I expected to, because most of the most of your orders just be like alcohol you're drinking. Now it's maybe like, it's significantly less than that. So I've saved a lot of money on that too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, drinks can be expensive, man, especially depending on the nightclub you go to.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of when I go out to a club, I just grab a club soda and lime, and it looks like I have a gin and tonic or something.
Yeah.
No one asks. I have noticed though, there's a bit of like an energetic difference, which is one of the things that doesn't make me super excited to go clubbing anymore. Is that like yeah, I could be cordial, I can be professional, I can still like laugh and stuff, but there's not that just like real raw connection because I know in the back of my mind that they are on a different frequency wave. with the alcohol. So have you experienced anything like that? Like you're kind of almost just going through the motions in a sense?
It depends. So if someone's just like kind of sipping on a drink and they're still like at that fairly
Mm,
sane spot, then I think it's fine. Um, but like I mentioned earlier, like at some point you'll start to see the people who are like really messed up, and you realize that you can't really have like a actual coherent conversation, you know. So it's like, okay, I like I'll entertain it, but at some point I'm probably gonna like kind of gravitate away for a little bit,
yeah.
you know. There have been some people who it's like at first it starts off as a nice conversation, and then they get really belligerent, and then I'm like, okay, I'm good. Um, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's been. I wouldn't say I've noticed any like significant changes, but I think it's easier to notice now when someone has kind of like gone a little too far.
Mm,
You know, like
yeah.
you can see like, okay, this person did not like control them. They did not monitor how much they were drinking, and it just kind of got to that point of like no return. So
You see in their eyes, they get the
the
like
blaze,
rollback. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's fun. It is funny sometimes, especially if they're a character. So, um, now how has not drinking affected your DJing when you're on stage when you're performing?
It's a good question. So I think ends up happening is when you initially, you know, when I'm just stepping up to the decks and I'm like sober, I get a little. I'm still very nervous, right? Like it's just the kind of the first time, the first moment of the night, you're getting warmed up. Usually, when I'm drinking, I tend to be a little bit more loose and not really so much in my head. But the downside of that is, you know, you're not as on point. You're not as focused, right? At least for me, anyway.
Yeah,
Um, but when I'm sober now, it's like, okay, I still get those pre-performance jitters and nerves and stuff. But after, you know, after like the first few songs, you're kind of like in the zone, right?
yeah.
You're good. But I think now when I'm like sober, it's like I'm fully like locked in and I'm fully focused on what I'm doing. Um, you know, I still feel a little, it still feels a little awkward and still get a little nervous at times. Um, but after a while, when you kind of like loosen up, you're not relying so much on alcohol to kind of loosen up. Now it's just like however you're feeling at that moment, and you're fully aware of how you're feeling at that moment. So, um, yeah, it's definitely helped me to kind of retain the focus that I have, and I'm not so
Okay.
like, you know, I don't have to worry about being like losing control or being sloppy or anything like that. You know.
Yeah. Now I'm wondering, like, is there a difference in like your energy when you're up on stage, like to the crowd? Because I found that when I've DJed sober, it becomes more of like a workout. So it's almost like I'm like leading a hit class or something, or like a fitness class.
Sure.
Versus, I'm sure when I mean, you see the guys drunk, they're just like in their DJ mode and like being DJs, right?
Yeah.
Did you notice a difference in how you perform when you've been off?
I'll be honest with you. So usually when I was drinking, I was a little bit less reserved and, you know, a little bit more lively.
Hmm.
Um, when I'm sober now, it's like I'm a little bit less. I'm a little bit more reserved and a little bit more kind of like locked in and focused. I'm not as livelier and kind of trying to like more eager to like engage with the crowd, you know. Um, so there's a difference there. I think just I'm basing that off of like the 2 or 3 shows that I played, right? So,
Okay.
you know, again, we're comparing, you know,
Yeah.
5 years of performing also while drinking versus now the 2 or 3 months of being sober and not having to do that, right? So
Okay.
now it's like now it's just a matter of just kind of getting more experience
Yeah.
to performing under like the not under the influence of just not drinking at all, just being sober. So I think as the years progress, I'll probably become a little bit more comfortable and a little more. I'll probably like find my space and be able to become more loose and to be able to do that. So
Pun intended. I love that. Lucid. We are next track, Lucid Dream. So
yeah, there you go.
we got our homie Josh coming in right now to got a couple questions. What's up, brother?
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for
What's going
coming
on,
on.
Josh?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, man.
Yeah, so cool. So we are all dance music lovers, I believe. So
Oh,
we
yes.
can
Oh yeah, fuck yeah.
cool convo. Yeah, Josh, you just want to ask some questions and start ripping it, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like, I guess the big question that I would have, right, would be, how did your, before being sober impact your relationships, and then like after, right? Like, how is that transitional phase? Because I think that's the part that scares a lot of people the most, is that, they're always worried about what that transitional phase will be like.
That's a great question. So I know for like in my 20s when I was out and stuff, I had a lot of friends who were also partying and stuff like that. And we all drank together. Um, but when I decided to kind of cut back for a little while, like even throughout the years, like my kind of friend circle has kind of decreased a little bit. It's kind of shrunk in size. But a lot of the friends who I've kind of told that I was decided to kind of take this year-long break, they were fully supportive. They were not judgmental. They never really say, they weren't like directly saying, "Yeah, we'll never hang out with you anymore." Like, you got to come drink. Or they never really like peer pressured me to start drinking or anything like that. So I was very lucky to have friends currently that were very supportive of my decision to kind of take the break. And I was lucky enough that some of them even were deciding, well, they decided to cut back on alcohol way before I decided to too. So they were very great to be able to kind of lean on them for any type of advice or questions I had, or they were great to just be able to kind of like just talk about how I'm feeling about this whole thing. So I don't think it's impacted my relationship that much. I was also I was also pretty worried about being out and then meeting other people who were also drinking, and then they would try to like peer pressure me to like start like get on the shot, like But that wasn't really the case. I realized like at least the people I've met, they don't really care. It's just like, oh, you don't want, okay, that's cool. It's like, hey, take the shot. I'm like, nah, I'm good. Like, okay, and that was about it. So yeah, I was lucky in that sense, where like I didn't really meet too many people who were trying to either peer pressure me to continue drinking or to cut my sobriety, or to try to like shame me for it, right? And if they did, I was just like, whatever. They're not really someone who I want to be around anyway. So
Right. Josh peer presses me all the time to drink. It's exhausting.
oh man.
Drink water, yeah. Stay hydrated.
Take a shot of water.
Right. Stay hydrated, bro. That's cool. Yeah, that's a really important point there, to be around people that are going to support you on your mission. Like both Josh and I talk about this on our channel. Like, you got to be around people that aren't going to just tear you down. And I know that can happen a lot when you're on like a sober path. People that maybe you drank with or partied with are just like, dude, what's happened to Greg? Like, what's he doing? Now he's just this crazy person. And Josh, kind of quick turnaround for you here. You have a very kind of opposite story of Greg here, and like most people. So this is kind of nuts. You didn't start drinking till what age?
Until I was 30.
What?
Good for you.
Yeah, so I don't know. It was weird. I was always like weirdly straight edge for like no reason. I know. I think I'm like part vampire, because I always had like plenty of energy, could stay up all night, like do whatever all the time. But also, wanted to make sure that I had fun and had a good time. And yeah, for me, I think it was partially like, one, just like not really, I don't think like growing up around it, because like my parents didn't drink, so didn't really know much about it. And then two, like trying a bunch of stuff, like like in college and whatnot, I'm just like, ugh, this is just, it's not tasty. Like I'm okay. But of course it's like always the cheap, like, terrible college like beers or whatever. So all that stuff, it just tastes horrible. So it's like, no, I'm good. And so like in college, I kind of found out that I could fulfill a very unique role in the ecosystem, which was, people want to go out and they want to, drink and have a good time, but they need someone that's going to DD. So, I'm like, hey, I love driving. Like, that's fine. I'll make sure my friends get home safe. But also, drunk people will buy their driver whatever they want from the drive-through at any point in the night. So I discovered this role where it's like, oh, okay, cool. My friends get home safe. I get fed extremely well. Like they get to still party and have a good time. It's a win-win-win-win-win. So yeah. And then by the time, once I turned 30, really what kind of happened was, it was just more of I just got really, really tired of having that, I don't drink, but I don't judge people that do. Like, I don't care. Like, okay, yeah. do your gonna thing. Like, I don't care. It doesn't affect me whatsoever. But a lot of people like get really uncomfortable around that. So I got really tired of having that conversation. So he's like, you know what, let me let me give this another try. Let me see if there's something in there I liked. And so then like kind of discovered the glorious world of cocktails and, whiskey and champagne. But then, yeah, once I like turned 31, I was like reviewing my budget. And I was like, why is it costing so much to go out now? And then I look back, I was like, oh yeah, because I'm not having like, like my, Sprite and 7-Ups or, pineapple juices. Like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah. These cost a bit more. So yeah, I was a little bit in for a surprise on that one, but yeah, I've kind of, I guess the opposite journey. So I guess, my lever's running pretty strong.
Well, and Josh, you came up with a video recently, so go check out Josh's channel, guys, about how you have to budget your lifestyle. So I'm sure there were some adjustments in the budget.
Yes, major adjustments were made, especially like in a city like LA, where it's probably one of like the most expensive cities to drink. So like it's really wild. Like I'll go out to like I was in San Antonio, Texas, a couple of years ago. I go to this like cool spot, and they have like some crazy sounding cocktails. Like, oh yeah, whatever, I'll try that. Sounds good. And the bartender goes, "Sir, are you sure? Just so you know, it's like one of our pricier cocktails." I was like, "Well, like how much is it?" He's like, "It's $9." And I'm just thinking like, dude, like bless your heart, you're just trying to warn me about a $9 cocktail. It's like from so it's like double it up, bro. Like we're good to go.
I relate to what you're saying, Josh, because when I was about to quit drinking, I just started to drink nicer whiskey. So I was drinking like Jack Daniels, and I wasn't drinking Fleischmann's or like Natty Lights anymore. And thankfully, I was on the way out of alcohol drinking. So, but I'm like, if I would have found this stuff in college instead of drinking like, I don't know, like, what was it, Captain Morgan? No, Captain Morgan's pretty good. The really bad stuff, just like, I think I would have been a little more hooked, but I was drinking the shit of the barrel. So I think I associated alcohol as bad because after a night of Natty Lights and Red Dog, you're just like, bro.
Yeah. And I figured like, all right, I got to like make up for some lost ground. Like my craziest purchase ever was $1,700 for a glass of cranberry juice because it was, bottle service at a bachelor party. And like half the guys didn't show up, but I was the best man. So I didn't drink at the time, right? So all I had was a glass of cranberry juice, but of course, bottles, everything, alcohol's flowing. So of course the bill shows up and it's like $1,700 shy, and I've already spent like $1,500 this night. So I was like, all right, I'm best man. Like and at the time I was like, that really hurt. I was like, all right, whatever, I got it. Like we're good. So yeah, that's probably my most ridiculous purchase. Is like, an extra $1,700 for a glass of cranberry juice. So I'm like, all right, now let me get that back tax on it.
What a sneaky move by the bachelor. By the groom. He's like, who's gonna pay for my drinks tonight?
No, actually, it wasn't his fault. The problem was that we had it was all laid out. It was gonna be like, I don't know, like $100 a person or something, but it's like half the people didn't show up. So that was the problem.
Man.
Yeah, like half of them didn't show up. So naturally there were some angry questions later. But yeah, that was the big issue. So, it's one of those things where it's like, looking back on it now, it's like I can kind of laugh at it. But yeah, it was a pretty wild night though.
Dude, that's a CDJ, Greg. That's like one, if you go behind the booth and you see the really fancy mixers for DJing, $1,700, you can get yourself one of those. And
just one though.
Just one. Yeah, you get one.
There's a lot you can do with that.
Yeah. So Greg, coming back to you here a bit, I'm curious, what is kind of your long-term plan or with alcohol and stuff? Do you think it's something you're going to continue, or where's your head at with that right now?
I don't know. So I know I decided to just take the year off and just kind of see what that kind of lands me. I don't know if I'm going to be full, like if I'm going to like start back up drinking after like the year. But I'm just kind of taking it one day at a time. I will tell you that, just based off of all the conversations we've been having and just kind of looking back on, what my experience has been like in the last couple months, I've been finding more reasons to not really drink, or at least drink as heavily as I used to, versus to go back to that space. So, who knows? Maybe I'll decide to maybe extend this to another 2 years, or maybe I'll just kind of cut back significantly where it's like, okay, I maybe drink like every once in a while. Or something like that. But yeah, like I said, like we'll just take one day at a time and see what happens.
And that's a good mindset, guys. If you're out there and you're struggling with quitting, just they say this in recovery groups too, like one day at a time, like just focus on what you can do today, make an oath every morning to get up and just say, today I'm not going to drink. And that's what I had to do anyway. And just take things very slowly, because if you look too far in the future, it can be a little daunting and be like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to go 3 years like without drinking, right? So I like that tip. I know that wasn't a tip, but it ended up being a tip. Just take things one day at a time. And this pertains to everything too, business, relationships. The more you can focus on what's going on in this moment and today, you're going to find that you're just a lot less stressed, and there's a lot less worry too. I think when I'm stressing about, like, that's the most painful part, is when I'm doing something enjoyable and I have the goal in mind, but I'm obsessing about the goal to where I just lose the joy of what I'm doing. And it's like, why am I doing this? And sometimes I've wasted time being in that obsessive place. So it's been a lesson for me too, to learn how to just come back to the present moment, and being off substances helps as well. I know, Josh, you don't drink crazy amounts, right? Like you just basically, like, on the weekends, like what's your relationship with alcohol right now?
I mean, yeah, it's purely social. Like, if I'm out, like, I definitely, like, can go out and have a good time. But, I've never been hungover, never threw up, never, blacked out, or, anything like that. But, I guess I probably still, like, have a, don't know where my limit is, but I don't, like, ever intend to find it. So, yeah, usually for me, I don't know, maybe I'll have like 2 or 3 when I'm out in a social setting. There's definitely been some nights where it's like, all right, cool. Like, we just have a, long day, and it's like, we're having fun. But for me, still just having the fundamental habits built in of, like, not really drinking. I always want to make sure that, I'm good. So, and then +2 now, where I'm just like looking at, like, all right, like, it's in LA, like, a lot of places drinks are getting close to like $30 a pop, and it's like, all right, like, is it like,
that's so
what
wild.
are we doing here? So it's like, starts to add up, and you're just like, all right, like, it's so yeah, for myself, it's keep it relatively calm. But yeah, I mean, I got a ton of alcohol at my house, and like, I never drink any of it when I'm on my own. So folks come over, like, hey, you want to have some? Yeah, sure, okay, cool, let's do it. But that, and then typically I avoid shots. But every now and again, maybe a shot comes in to play. But
you're what we call a normie, where you don't have that addictive likeness towards alcohol. So speaking of normies, that terrible transition, but we got our homie Huds here, another homie here, and we're gonna bring him in. What's up, brother?
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, good to see
Dude,
you.
I love this discussion. I mean, I'm a huge fan of EDM. And you also know I'm a huge fan of drinking, so it's always interesting to have these type of conversations. So really nice to meet you, man. This is really interesting, because I know a couple DJs, I know some that don't really drink either, and I'm like curious, and I got some questions about like the industry. So like, how many other DJs do you know that are actually sober, or that don't drink?
I know one of my other close friends, he decided to cut back on drinking a lot too, because he's kind of come to the same conclusion that, when you're out at nightclubs and you're tempted to drink, sometimes things can go left very, very quickly. I'm trying to think, who else do I know? I think right now I just know 1 or 2 other people that I think decided to just kind of go sober, or at least cut back drastically, because they've seen like the consequences of, like, you're not, like, I think we've all reached a point where we're no longer just regular party people who can just kind of go out and get wasted and not have to worry about any long-term professional consequences of, getting super lit and, saying or doing something that could potentially just, like, ruin your reputation. So we've kind of come to that conclusion, like, okay, maybe it may not be worth it in the long term. So, but yeah, I think for the most part, some other friends they don't get super drunk. They just they drink at a fairly reasonable amount. So when we had those conversations, like, yeah, we get it. We understand what's going on. So yeah.
Now let me ask you, on the opposite side of the spectrum, have you seen it completely ruin anybody's career, or completely, like, cause them to take a lot of steps back?
I could tell you that it's definitely happened to me, and I've definitely seen, even recently, I was at a show, we were all like in the green room, and we seen this one DJ who's fairly known. I'm not going to say his name, but he got himself pretty pretty messed up. And just the conversations that he was having with some of the other people in the room, and just the things that he was saying, made everyone just kind of go like, is he serious right now? Right. And then just after that, when we all left the green room and kind of like talking on the side, that was like the first time that me and like a lot of us that were in the room met that person. And it definitely did create like a kind of a dark cloud and kind of ruin my perception of him in general. So yeah, it definitely has that capability to, especially when you go too far, right? You end up saying and doing some things, especially when you meet them for the first time. It's like, wow, like it definitely creates a really bad first impression, especially if you go super far into it. So
cool. No, that's interesting. So then I also have another question, because you're putting on a show. So when you're putting on a show, sometimes things are fake. So I know that they have that like a lot of times they have bottles and stuff on stage, maybe throwing stuff out into the crowd, or maybe they're taking shots themselves on stage. Do they ever do that with like you've got, let's say, a bottle of Grey Goose and you're taking shots? Is it ever just water instead?
So I don't know, like with actual personal experience, but I know I was reading Hustle Harder from 50 Cent, where he would talk about when he was at the clubs or like hosting a party at the club, he would buy a bottle of champagne and he'll like serve it to all his friends. But then when the bottle's empty, he'll like secretly like tell the I think the bartender or someone to fill up with ginger ale. And then he would just kind of like be on stage, or he would like be in the section and just like be drinking it straight from the bottle. And one thing, he's just drinking champagne from bottles, really just ginger ale. So I don't know, and like if other DJs do that per se, but I know that's a thing where like they'll just like do it just for the show, but really it's just like either water or just like ginger ale or something like that.
Yeah, because I was thinking about that, because it's very difficult when you because the perception is you're drinking and partying. So if you don't want to be drinking alcohol, how do you do that? And so like that makes perfect sense to like replace the bottle with something else. That's cool. That's a cool story.
Especially like if you're in a crowd, you don't know the difference. You just see so and so just like drinking straight from the bottle, or like giving shots to somebody. They're like in that party kind of mode. But in reality, it's like it's just drinking water or ginger ale or something that's like non-alcoholic. So,
Greg, if you ever start drinking and I see you on stage drinking through a bottle, I'm gonna call you out.
That's fine, totally.
Guys got Sprite.
I don't think anybody will be able to hear you.
That's why I'm okay with it.
Oh man, that's awesome. So yeah, Greg, following up on some of HUD's questions about in the industry, do you have like a network of guys that you connect with when you like do shows and stuff? Do you have like a core group of people that you kind of bounce ideas off with, collab? You kind of solo right now?
No, I think that's actually probably a prerequisite for success in this industry, is finding that core group of guys, or even girls, or even just anyone in general, who you can just kind of lean on for advice, or to kind of bounce ideas off of, or just shoot the shit and just to kind of like talk about what you're going through, or just to trade ideas. I definitely had a core group of friends who I met through like another group of friends, or other like master classes that I've done over the last couple of years, and we've kept in contact for years, and some of them are like some of my closest friends. And I think it's definitely helped as I've started to kind of go through this kind of year-long journey of abstaining from alcohol. It's kind of like bounce some of the ideas I have in my head about that, and just to kind of like talk about stuff and be able to talk with them, and to kind of have their support, and to kind of go through that journey has been phenomenal for me. And I think if anything, just having that core group of friends they've helped to kind of help me to kind of make my advances in this industry, and I probably wouldn't even know what I would do without them. So
that's awesome, man. And I think that can pertain to any kind of niche or genre, in terms of whether it's business or just kind of anything in the creative space, right? I think it's really good to have that core group of guys that you can, again, bounce ideas off with, connect with. And it takes time to build that group. So I'm curious, like, how do you balance then, like, being friends versus being business? Where does that line?
That's a good question. I think sometimes it's hard to kind of like find that boundary between that, because sometimes they can definitely intertwine. Right. So some of like one of my other friends, he asked me to be an A&R for his label, right? And so now there's like that kind of like the balance between working as like an A&R for his label. So essentially he's my boss, but then he's also my friend who I hang out with sometimes on weekends, and I'll come over to his house and we'll just like, or even online, we'll just like shoot the shit, right? Um, I think it can help with business because now you already have that rapport built up. So where it's like you're a little bit more willing to be open and honest about how you're feeling about certain things, but then there's also you have that incentive to have them be successful because like that's your friend, you want to see them succeed. It can get a little dicey now because especially if there's something you need to bring up, you have to kind of express either negative news or you might have to criticize them for something. Having to find that line between being still respecting him as a friend, but also keeping things professional and keeping the business intact, that can be a little bit dicey. And sometimes friendships can go left and can just be strictly just a business relationship now. Or there have been moments where it's like you realize that they're not, I would say, good in terms of being like a professional, but you still like them as a friend. So sometimes it can kind of definitely go back and forth. And yeah, just trying to find that balance between the two can definitely be a little bit tricky. But once you kind of find that balance, it can definitely be very fruitful.
Nice. Yeah. It's such a challenging balance. It's a beautiful challenge, but yeah, it's like when you tell them something about that's happening in the personal life versus when, like, if you're having a business conversation, like how do you make those two intertwine, like you said. So yeah, maybe we'll have to do a podcast on that, like how to balance friendships and business within the context. Josh, do you have something to say?
Oh no, I mean for me, my question is always around for every DJ, and I've know quite a few. I do some business consulting for a duo DJs as well, and I got some fun stories there. But my question would be, song requests. What are your thoughts? How do you handle those? Because that's always my first question for everyone that DJs.
Yeah. So
before we dive into that, I'm going to bring in somebody here that loves song requests, and his name is Jaron. So what's up, brother?
Oh, hey, how's it going? I don't request songs. I go and just let the set ride out.
Dude, I've been having the worst transitions today.
My bad, yeah. And I was literally writing a module on improv yesterday, yes, and for my online dating course that's coming out here in a couple months. And yeah, I should have helped you out there. It's like, well, yeah, no, I don't do song requests, dude. I'm in the clouds.
Also, Greg, back to you.
Yeah, so for the most part, I don't take song requests. But unless like they asked me previously and it was something that I already was planning on playing, I'll probably just do it. But otherwise, like anyone who kind of runs up on the decks and says, "Hey, can you play this song?" I'll say, "Yeah, sure," and then I'll just not do it. Yeah, I've seen that happen mostly for like open format DJs where like I think that's a little more acceptable. But if it's like if you're you're the main opener for the night or you're the headliner and then someone tries to run up on stage to like ask to like request a song, I just no. I just don't do it. I don't think any of my friends do it really. So
yeah, that's what I hear a lot. So for those of you listening, just so you know, like respect your DJs, they're working. Don't rush up and be like, hey. But I know like quite a few that are just like, oh, song request, yeah, $100, and let's see how bad someone really wants to listen to it.
That's actually not a bad idea. Probably start doing that. Just charging them.
Pay for your drink. You start saving up for that $1,700 cocktail.
Right.
Song request. You're good. Cool. So, Jaron, did you have any questions for Greg?
Yeah, I'm just popping in, so I don't know what kind of territory you guys covered. I think as it pertains to the topic of quitting alcohol, I was recently at a music festival last weekend. Come in, and this happens at every festival I go to. Come in like, all right, we're gonna keep it cool. We're just maybe we'll get like a little high going, ride it out through the weekend, and then literally a week later, I'm still having weird dreams, and like my brain can't tell if I'm awake or asleep. So that's starting to subside a bit, but I always wonder, like when we were at the festival last weekend, and it was a relatively smaller, more intimate type environment, that there were a lot of after parties, and the the good vibes went on all night, and then you get maybe a couple hours of sleep. It's not really sleep. It's not recovery. It's not restful sleep. You get up and then you do it again, and you string multiple days together. I was wondering, in terms of when you were in that ambiance, or maybe you were still drinking. I don't know how often you were drinking, or if you were doing other substances. How do you maintain that lifestyle? How do you manage it? Because after 3 days of that, I am zonked for the next week. So I couldn't imagine being on the road and just doing that time after time after time again.
So I haven't done any like long strings of like shows or like touring or anything like that. But when I was in my 20s, even like a little bit in my 30s, I would like do these like long 3-day festivals and then mix in like an after party or two. And then all those days were just like doing the pre-gaming and then going out to the actual festival and drinking there. And then sometimes even at the after party, we're still going, right? So, after 3 days of that, it can be very exhausting and tiring. And, nowadays it's like, okay, after that, I need like a good month off of just like relaxation and just like not looking at alcohol at all. In my 20s, like, oh yeah, we just did a 3-day festival. Let's go out again in this coming Saturday, right? So it's like a little bit easier. But even looking back on it now, it's like I don't even know how I was able to do that. Like it's just insane because all of that just kind of just takes a toll on your body, and it can definitely have a lot of negative effects to you. So, but nowadays it's like, yeah, I can't do 3 days of that anymore. Like I need at least like a long time to kind of recover. So, but now it's like, if I'm not doing anything like that, it's a little bit easier to recover because now it's like, I'm actually getting a full, 8 hours of sleep. As versus like staying up until 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, sleeping for 4 hours and then doing it all over again. Now it's like, okay, I need to get the full 8. I can actually hydrate myself in the day. And then, I would say transitioning into that kind of plan of attack in terms of doing these long marathons of parties definitely has helped a lot.
I plan the pre-festivities and post-festivities too, in terms of I've got electrolytes the whole time if I'm doing other substances that are common in those types of environments, and then afterwards make sure you eat a good diet, make sure that I block out a couple days of work just because like I'm awake, but I'm not like really 100% fully consciously there. How do you go about managing a come down? And that's whether you're just doing alcohol plus another substance, or literally just being in the desert for 3 days, sweating your ass off and dancing nonstop. It feels like you ran a marathon afterwards. What would you recommend for like the come down of the festival vibes?
Definitely taking some time off, either from work or school or whatever, just to kind of give yourself time to just reset and just relax. Definitely avoid doing anything like hard substances or anything like that up to that point. And then, just taking it easy, just relaxing, finding any type of like decompression kind of techniques to do, whether it be like getting a massage or just laying down, or make sure you're hydrating yourself, like you said, electrolytes, like drinking Gatorade or drinking water, getting yourself hydrated, and again, having like a solid diet, because when you're out at these festivals, they're not serving like the healthiest food in the world. It's just like a lot of fast food stuff and a lot of alcohol and a lot of like junk
we barely
food.
eat it all. It's a liquid diet.
That too, yeah. Like sometimes you're not even eating at all, and you're just kind of just riding off of the calories there. But making sure that afterwards you're making sure you're getting like the full 3 meals a day and making sure you're getting like nutrition and stuff like that. So that's definitely helped me out in the last like time I've been going out. And if I was going out of festivals, and making sure I have that day or two of just trying to just reset and just getting myself in a better spot to get back to my baseline. So,
and I have one more question. I know that common in these types of environments, like I played sports in college, and it was the same thing. Half the time, yeah, you'd go on the road for a weekend, but really a lot of the team would care more about the after parties than the actual like games or athletic competition element of being involved in a university sport. And when you're in that environment, how difficult is it, or is it difficult, or if it is difficult, how do you manage being the lone sober DJ on the set list? Or are there a lot of guys that kind of put that in a box, treat it as their profession, take it seriously, and maybe, yeah, they'll show up at the after parties, but they're not necessarily partaking in all the activities?
So in the last few months, it's been, I don't really go around telling everyone that I'm sober. I'm just chilling. If I get offered a drink, I'll just say, nah, I'm good. And I've been lucky enough to find or come across guys who just like, okay, that's fine. They don't really peer.
Yeah, most people don't push.
They don't really
noticed
at all. Like,
yeah.
It's really cool to see that. But honestly, I don't really do a whole lot of after parties anymore. just because I feel like after like the full like 9, 10 to like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning of like doing that the after party is the last thing I want to do. I just want to go sleep. So usually I just like, yeah, I peace out and I go home. And I've been again lucky enough to not run into too many people who like try to peer pressure you to like go to the after party or to like continue the whole thing. So it's just been like, yep, I'm good. I just show up, I do my thing, I hang out for a little bit, go home and sleep, and that's it.
One last question that came to my mind.
Sure.
Aside from having a giant group of girls with you, what's the best way to get into an after party? Let's say like me and my dude roll out to a festival. It's in a state we've never been before. We don't really have a large social network. How do we get closer to getting into the after party type things? Usually we'll just roll out with some girls and that kind of helps, but it's
girls usually helps. Yeah, girls usually helps. And then also just knowing the person who's either organizing it or hosting it, just getting close with them, and then getting to know them, connecting with them, and then bringing a ton of girls with you.
Josh, you just had a video on that, didn't you?
Yeah, which I'm like, the after party most recently was at my house, and I hosted some.
We were doing the after, yeah.
So
that works well too.
I get a question too, just kind of going off of that because Jaren's making me think of some other stuff. So, what is like a secret or some type of misconception or like fun fact about the industry that you didn't know until you were actually out there performing?
This might sound a little messed up, but I'm going to go for it anyway. It's not as organized as you think it is. It's very, like, a lot of times things are less professional than you think. Things are very much all over the place. And I didn't realize that until I started to really, get myself involved with other labels and start directly interacting with some of the industry people. Like, kind of realizing, like, oh, wait, like, especially now that I'm also working at like a regular corporate job and kind of like seeing that difference between how they do things versus how a lot of people in nightlife kind of operate. And it's like, wow, this is like a very stark difference. Like in my corporate job, this would never, ever happen. Like no one would ever tolerate this, So yeah, like it's cool, but then sometimes in terms of like things being a little more lax and less uptight, but sometimes it can create less than desirable results when it comes to getting things done. So, just that level of laxness and lack of professionalism was definitely a surprise for me, for sure.
Why do you think that is? Because you think like there's so much money going around, like you want to be.
Well, that's I'll let Greg answer that.
It depends. Like sometimes, like some spots they have a lot of money. Sometimes, like some spots they don't. Sometimes they're just kind of scraping by and trying to get things to work out. But I don't know. I think it's a mixture of that. I don't always think there's a lot of reputable people, to say the least, that work in this industry. So sometimes they tend to do less than desirable things. There's also a lot of like very passive aggressive people in this industry too. So sometimes, they won't necessarily be on the up and up with certain stuff. So yeah, that's definitely been a bit of a frustrating point, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's a wide variety of things, honestly.
I imagine there's some ego in the music scene.
There's a lot of ego, which also ties into a lot of like the passive aggressiveness that you're running into, for sure.
Creative people in general, I'm kind of speaking for myself here, we can tend to go down that passive aggressive path because with creative people, it's like everything is in our own heads, right? Including the outside world. So it's hard to make that distinction sometimes that, okay, everyone else is having their own experience. That's way different from mine.
Where you end and they begin is what I like to call it.
Yeah. But, speaking of the money, right? I would ask you, like, how shocked are people when you have to explain to them how the actual like finances of it break out? What versus, because a lot of times they'll see, oh, you're performing with like this big name headliner, and it's like, what they actually pay out is like, it's shocking, like how little they actually pay.
Yeah, people think that I'm living this luxurious lifestyle, and I'm like living the high life. In reality, that's not the case at all. Like I still live very humble. And even like as you kind of like work from the top and go down, like there's not a lot of people in this industry that makes like, I don't think everyone even makes like six figures. Maybe like the top like 1% of that makes like a lot of money. And then towards like as you kind of get more towards like the middle class and like even like the lower class, like it just drops off significantly. So yeah, I don't know like the exact specifics of like how much everyone else is making, but I can definitely tell you that a lot of people don't quit their actual day jobs while they're actually working in the industry as well. So they're working their regular job that funds like the industry job, but then even with the industry job, they're not really putting in that much time into it because they're not making a whole lot of money. So yeah.
Well, if you ever have questions, you can always DM me. I can tell you exactly, and I know what a lot of people are pulling on the. It's interesting.
I will keep that in mind.
That there's a very sharp drop off with at a certain tier.
Yeah,
that's great.
How long do people stay in the industry? Because I know the way you describe it there, it sounds like professional sports. I've known people that I have a couple buddies I grew up with that did go pro, and their names you'd probably recognize, but like two of them of all the guys I ever played sports with. Most of them get caught up in the farm teams. They're like, dude, I'm making like $500 a month living in California. I can't swing it. I got to go get a job, and then they flush out. It's not lack of talent by any means. It's just they can't swing it. Is that kind of similar in the DJ space or the music industry also?
I've seen a lot of my colleagues. They work in the industry, whether they run their own labels or they're promoters or they work part time at a nightclub. They do that for a very long time, like sometimes even 10 plus years. But it's not their full time job. Sometimes they work another job to kind of sustain that, to actually be able to pay the bills. I know some people who they manage for maybe like 5 or 7 years. They manage other artists and then they just stop working. They quit altogether because they get really frustrated about just the politics or just the lack of money that they've been receiving over the years. So at least from what I've seen, from my perspective, I don't really see too many people that kind of start off and then work for 20, 30 years. That's maybe like a very small percentage. There's some people who start off and then they stop after like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and then they just kind of go back to working their actual job full time and just step away from music altogether. So it's a mixed bag, but I don't really see too many people, at least the ones I've met, who've been in this for 20, 30 years, and then just say like, this is my actual job. So they always have something else that's kind of sustaining them, but then they kind of like dabble and do it sometimes. So
I found that I was getting coached by a couple guys, and they're like big names, like they're signed with Armin, they're signed with these massive like W&W, like they're signed to those labels, and they're doing coaching because that's how they have to pay for their lifestyle. Like they can't make money off DJ, and especially when the COVID hit, they all lost their shows, so they really had to like double down on the coaching. And it was just, it was really eye-opening for me because my goal with music was to kind of travel the world, have that lavish DJ lifestyle, and they're kind of like, yeah man, that probably ain't gonna work out for you. It's like, we're not trying to be negative, but like unless you're like Deadmau5 or like a Savant that just like creates a new genre in the music scene, it's very difficult to get to that place. So it's funny too, because right after I was told that, I found Rich Cooper, and then I transitioned out of music, so it kind of all aligned pretty well. And he's like, dude, you got to start making money and stuff. I didn't want to be 40 years old in my studio apartment making beats. I was like,
do you still lay down beats every now and then? Because if we're gonna meet up here in Mexico City, I play almost every day, although I've been busy lately.
Oh, we're creating a track.
Yeah,
we'll there we go.
Right. We'll create some musical fusion.
Greg, if you want to collab, bro, let's do it.
That's a question for Greg. I would say, as a musician, for you, from your perspective, what makes an awesome set versus what makes like a bad set? Because you always have the ones where you're just like, it was just like, it's on, and then the other times it's like, ooh.
In terms of like me, like if I would judge like my own sets, are you talking about
like,
me observe? Okay.
Yeah, it's for you. What's here?
Yeah, it depends. But I think for the most part, if it feels like it just kind of flows naturally, like every song that I pick just kind of like feels like the natural next song, like things just kind of like go from one song to the next to the next to the next without ever feeling like it was there was ever like a shift, a massive noticeable shift in energy, or just everything just feels very cohesive, and the crowd is reacting to it in the way that I would say would be very positive. I would say those are usually like my better sets for sure. usually if I'm just kind of just I don't know what to do and I'm just kind of picking like the next song randomly, just hoping that it works. Um, those are usually like the sets that usually don't really turn out very well because again, there's no real sense of like cohesion and things just kind of don't really work out in the way that I was hoping to. Plus, you kind of notice it in the crowd too, like they kind of don't really kind of vibe with it. So it's like okay, so yeah, I would say like my better sets, always the ones that I loved have always been the ones that where from track one to like maybe track 7, 8, 9, or 10, like the end of the set, things just kind of like just flow naturally and just felt great and just kind of seeing the reaction kind of like feed off of me. So yeah, those are
They
like
kind of have a theme, almost like a movie, it seems. Like
yeah,
the ones that I really, really like, they start and like you can hear that underlying theme, and then yeah, it'll take its deviations, but it always comes back to that home base, and it really, I view it like a really good movie. The ones I like. Sometimes at this festival we went to, there's some rough transitions, and in the crowd you're like, oh, like, whoa.
what-
Although some of them pull it off really well, like it's leading you up to a point. You're like, all right, here's what's coming next, and then boom, they whiplash you and take you for another turn. You're like, all right, that was sick. So,
yeah.
when it comes to your sets, do you normally have them kind of mapped out, or is it more just you're gauging the audience and seeing what they want, or is it a bit of both?
That's a great question. So in the beginning, even I think even leading up to this year, I would really plan out, like pre-plan a lot of the sets that what I would play out. So I would kind of know exactly like what was come next, and that came with mixed results. So sometimes I would get it right, and then they reacted to it greatly, and it would work out really well. Sometimes I wouldn't pull it off well because again, you're pre-planning things, but they may not really like what you're putting together. They may not really feel up what you're actually trying to play. So it does limit you in terms of being able to properly feed off of what they're actually like reacting to. I've been trying to do more like kind of like impromptu sets where I would just start off with a track and then see how they react to it and just kind of just pick the tracks as I'm going along. Um, that has gotten me a lot like better results because now it's like I'm actually like in the it kind of feels like I'm in the crowd with them where it's like
Mhm.
I'm playing the songs but I'm also just kind of reacting to how they're reacting, so it's kind of a bit more of like a natural like kind of ebb and flow kind of like give and take type of thing.
You're creating a
So
shared experience.
right, you're getting an extra experience, absolutely.
That brings me to one more question. I've always heard, and this could be a ridiculous question, especially with like wedding DJs or strip club DJs or like DJs at bars, that they'll use it for kind of crowd control. Like, hey, let's slow it down, get people to the bar. Hey, let's speed it up. We need more people on the dance floor. I know there's a couple of times like we were going pretty hard, and like your heartbeat's racing. All of a sudden it slows down. You're like, oh, I need water, and we had these little hand fans, and oh, nice little break. To what degree is that true, if at all?
For performing DJs, like say like if you're like headlining a night or you're just a warm up, well, it depends. So like if you're like the headliners, sometimes that's not always the case. Like you just play your set and that's it. I've definitely heard that term being used before where like especially with open format DJs, they'll kind of use it to kind of like, control the crowd where there'd be smaller segments where just like a dancing segment where everyone's on the floor. Then, maybe for like 5, 10 minutes, you'll play a slower song to get people to the bar to get more drinks and stuff. And you kind of have this kind of like back and forth where it's like you have a section where people are getting the drinks, bring it back to the floor, get the drinks back to the floor, and you kind of like that kind of cycle kind of occurs throughout the night. So I've definitely heard that used in certain like I guess parties situations. Yeah.
Greg, have you had to learn how to read a room? Like, was that a skill that you had like right away, or is it come over time? Like,
So, this is actually when I was pre-planning a lot of the sets. That wasn't something that I took into consideration a lot of the times, and it definitely did bite me in the ass. So when I started freestyling, that was when I was like, okay, I have to like really start learning how to, like you said, read the room, right? If I play a certain song that's like at a certain BPM with a certain vibe, or like, and they're not liking that, then I have to go find something else that works, that will probably work better on the floor. And then you kind of, based off of how they react to that, you like, okay, this is working. Let's kind of stay in this realm. Or if you want to kind of take them into a different direction, you pick a different song and then you just kind of read off of how they're reacting to that. And if it works, then you kind of keep going on that vein. Otherwise, you just keep trying different stuff and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And you just kind of base your track selection off of that. So I think, especially my experience doing a lot of more opening gigs recently, that has been something that I've been attempting to get better at and learn in the last couple of months. And it's come with some mixed results, but I think it's definitely a useful skill to have just as a DJ in general.
Are there any tracks you play where no matter what the vibe is, everyone just goes nuts?
That's a good question. I don't really have too many go-tos recently. Um, but I think when it comes to, I'm trying to think of the last song I played that really worked well.
Turn up for what?
Gotta be something,
Oh,
gotta be something like Bad Bunny.
That's
Everyone goes wild for Bad Bunny.
That's a secret weapon, man.
Yeah, he knows.
Trying to think. No, I can't think of one right now. Actually, I've played so many different sets in the last couple of years. I don't really have like a solid go-to, and a lot of the gigs I've been playing have either been like like a straight up like door set where I'm just literally just warming up the crowd, or either like right before the headliner comes on, or it's just like a headlining gig. It's been like a mixed bag, and I never really have like one song that always works. It's always just been like different songs for different situations. So.
One tip I'm going to throw in here that I learned is that you never play the headliner's songs ever.
Yes, you don't ever do that.
Don't ever do that. Yeah.
Unless you want to piss them off or you have beef with them and you really just want to ruin their whole night. Yeah, yeah, totally. Play his old discography if you want to. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, don't do that.
Dude, that would be so funny that you like play a majority of their songs before they go on.
You're like an extension of them.
Yeah, you gotta be careful though, because like some guys are wild. Like there's some guys can actually like remix live. So I've seen that where like dudes will like actually start remixing stuff live, and then then they're like, okay, like you mess with the wrong person at that point.
Oh man, just going back to like the ego thing. Like if you ever do that, yeah, they'll definitely let you know that's a no.
I heard the story like one guy, it might have been like Above and Beyond or something, but the headliner played all their tracks like as homage, so it was meant to be like out of respect, but they didn't know that like it just ruined their show. So yeah, and also don't like, another tip if you're a new DJ out there, don't like outperform the headliner. That's something I've heard too. Like sometimes new guys will come in, those like, dude, I'm just gonna this is the show right now, and then like they exhaust the crowd, and then by the time the headliner comes on, everyone's just like, dude, I'm ready to go home.
I bet that's why it's always good to at least ask the promoter like what is expected, like what type of songs should you play, like what BPM should you stay in, what kind of vibe are you looking for. Well, I know some of the newer guys who are just like, yeah, this is my night, it's time to like do the thing. They never really last long in the scene. Like they usually, it's like a grand opening, grand closing, they're already done.
So now I gotta ask, what's your wildest story as a DJ? Like
so this was actually like the very first gig that I played in New York. So I had a friend who was supposed to open for Super and Tab back in May of 2019, but he couldn't play. I think something happened. He got sick, so he actually like managed to recommend me as a sub. I was talking, and I've never DJed live before. So this is like the first time we were doing this. So I was talking to the promoter. I told him like, listen, like this is my situation. I've never played out live before, but I'll put something together. He's like, cool, totally cool with it. But it was one of those boat parties in the city, but they've been notorious for not starting on time. So when I showed up to like to start my set rather, they weren't even set up yet. So my set time just got completely blown away. The next set of guys were scheduled to go up, but they were like, yeah, you could totally go back to back with us. So it's totally fine. So I was like, okay, cool. So I actually ended up like my first gig ended up being just me going back to back with this duo out in Long Island. And it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. We were supposed to open. We were supposed to kind of do more, like play more like kind of warm up, kind of like, low BPM, kind of like vibey type of records. We didn't do that. We just totally played like a bunch of headliner stuff, like Big Room 128, super trance stuff. We were totally not supposed to do that, and we did it anyway. But it actually ended up being a lot of fun. It was probably like the most fun we've had. It ended up being a set that I almost didn't play, but it was definitely something I'll never forget. It was awesome.
That's awesome, man. That's beautiful. So, guys, we are going to wrap up here. Greg, a couple questions for you to wrap up the show here. A couple pieces of advice you would give to, one, people that are starting out in the music industry, and then two, people that are either taking a break from alcohol, trying to manage their substance use, or quit completely.
Sure. So when you're starting out in the industry, I think it's important to know that networking is extremely important. You can be the most skilled musician in the world, but if no one knows you, if no one can actually like vouch for you, it's gonna be very difficult to navigate in this industry. Like you can't do it all by yourself. You need like a tribe of people that can really vouch for you. Um, so putting yourself out there, meeting people, whether it's online or actually in person. I would say in person, like actually meeting people in person is probably going to net you um, a lot in terms of like a long-term investment versus just interacting through like online stuff like through Instagram and Facebook. Because they just know you as just like this face online, right? Versus actually like getting that in-person interaction. I think that will take you much farther in life. So definitely network a lot, get yourself out there, get involved with your local scene, or at least know the people that are in your local scene, and at least um, get that in-person engagement for sure. Um, and I think in terms of someone trying to start their journey into either taking a break from alcohol or just cutting it out altogether, definitely read How to Control Your Drinking from Alan Carr. That was definitely the book that kind of made me decide to just take that long break, and to definitely find people who you can kind of lean on in terms of getting support and getting advice from. It could be your family, it could be your friends. If it also involves just going to AA, that works too. Um, Luckily, I still have my core group of friends who are also sober or just not really drinking a lot I can lean on. So that definitely helps as well. But definitely have a tribe of people. Again, have that tribe of people that you can definitely lean on to kind of get that emotional support and, or whatever advice you have.
Great tip. And speaking of some of your support here, we got Beth saying your sets are always banger. So
Hey, what's up, Beth? Shout out to Beth. She's someone who I know from the New York scene for sure.
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, man, I'm excited to see you live someday for sure. So we'll just go a little around the table here. You guys can say where people can find you, what you're doing in the space right now. So Huds, we'll start with you, my friend.
Sure. So I'm a dating coach. So that's my gift to the world. You're a sobriety coach. I'm a dating coach. So if you ever had any questions on any of those types of things, or how alcohol or substance abuse may be affecting your dating life, you can hit me up right there, IG at the Hudsman. I'd be happy to help.
Awesome.
Is it me? Am I up? Are we going around the horn?
Yep.
Yeah. So I would say I like the term. I'm a transformation coach or specialist or consultant. So in terms of you're here, you want to get here, you don't know what that looks like. I'll help you create flexible frameworks and mental structures to get you to that point. I do cover the dating topics quite a bit. I cover fitness quite a bit. I used to be a big old fat guy, and now I'm not. Some personal finance, and then a lot of guys reach out to me for anything about downsizing your life, being a minimalist, and then doing the remote first or the digital nomad type lifestyle. I've done all that stuff, and I've helped a lot of guys out in those areas. Find me on Instagram at Men's Shrine. Be sure to follow my YouTube channel as well as the YouTube channels of everyone else here on the panel. And hit me up, send me a DM if you want a video request. If you're interested in taking it to the next level, I can get you into a couple of different groups, and we'll put you in the right place and get you where you need to get going.
Thank you, brother. And Greg, to you, my friend.
Yeah, sure. You can find me and all of my latest news in terms of music or shows at Instagram, SoundCloud, Facebook at Apollo Nash Music, all right there for you. And yeah, if you guys like.
Cool.
I guess that leaves me. Yeah, I'm just a professional shenanigator. That's pretty much what I do. So shenanigans, general insanity, and all sorts of stuff. But I've been a consultant predominantly in the tech world, but for the last going on like 10 years now, I've been more of like a dating lifestyle coach. So helping folks out in the dating world, but also in all aspects related to lifestyle. So whether it's fashion, finance, or just fun, that's pretty much me. So feel free to shoot me a DM, or you can follow me at all my socials at Renegade Wingman, and you'll see some of the glimpses into the stuff that I can show without the lawyers getting upset. So let's put it that way. So yeah, I like to have fun.
He ain't lying, guys. So yeah, so we also have a separate YouTube channel called Men of Now. and we're actually going to be doing a live stream today at 3 p.m. Eastern. So recommend you guys tune into that. It's going to be a pretty intense topic. So we're excited for it. You'll see all of us except for Greg. Greg, if you do want to hop on at some point, you're welcome for sure. And we're just going to kind of talk about some of the dating dynamics in the modern age today. So 3 p.m. Eastern, tune in on Men of Now. It'll also be streamed to Hudz's channel, Jaren's channel, my channel. So wherever you hop on, that's great. And for me, you can find me on Sobriety University, which you may be on now. I do sobriety coaching to help people quit marijuana, alcohol, whatever their vice may be. And just, give, if I can do it, you can do it. That's kind of my message. So I definitely at a really low point, a real rock bottom. Actually, in this room I'm at, I lived here very depressed. I would just smoke weed every day. And it was quite a depressing existence, but I got out of it, so I have full confidence you can as well. Keep an eye out for the collab between Jaren, Greg, and I, where it's gonna be a banger. And yeah, man, Greg, thank you for coming on today. It was fantastic to meet you. We've been in contact for a couple of years now, and this is the first time we're actually having like a one-to-one. So the internet's a crazy space, and we appreciate all you've done and your wisdom and your knowledge. This was a very cool episode because we're all lovers of music and the music scene. So once again, appreciate you, brother.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me. Really appreciate it. It's been an awesome conversation to have. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, let's do more in the future. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Cool. So thank you guys again. And for everyone in the comments that tuned in, we really appreciate you as well. A lot of good engagement there. So we will catch you on the next one.